MarkRogersTV inundated with spring football, especially from the Big Ten on Saturday with Nebraska, Penn State, Ohio State, and Wisconsin teeing it up to finish off their 15 spring practices, and we bring you our look at the Badgers. Let's first start with a comment made by running back Melvin Gordon coming off that 1,700-yard season in line to possibly vie for a Heisman Trophy. But he's thinking about the team, and he's thinking about goals, and he's shooting for the top, the best, something that we may think that may be a little bit beyond Wisconsin at this point, certainly a top 15 program in the country, but maybe not in that very elite top-of-the-line category. But Melvin Gordon says, I came back to college football, did not opt for the NFL draft because I want to win a national championship. I am shooting for this team making that 14 playoff. Well, unfortunately for Melvin Gordon and Wisconsin, they can't completely control that. We know it's a selection process, not a true playoff process, but he can certainly put them in position. And I love that he went out there and said, that's why I'm playing for Wisconsin this season instead of opting to go pro. I want to go to a national championship game. I want to go to this playoff system. Then the goal is to win 2 games and win the national championship. His head coach, Gary Anderson, no issue with that. It's not like Melvin Gordon said, we're going to win the national championship. I guarantee it. He simply said, that's the goal. Well, that should be the goal, to win the championship. Win the Big Ten championship, win the national championship. Let's see what we had during this spring game that looked to be far from a national championship game with about 9,000 people in the stands at Madison. And we saw some spotty play indicated by the final score of 6-0. So in the first half, it was a very much controlled scrimmage. There were scripted plays. There was no tackling at all. So they were basically just playing 11-on-11 drills of such. But again, no tackling in the first half, and that's when Gordon played his time. And then in the second half, Wisconsin went at it for 30 minutes. So looking at the quarterback situation, Joel Stave did not play. He's had shoulder injuries for the past 2 seasons, got knocked out 2 years ago when Kurt Phillips had to take over the team and go to the Rose Bowl. And then just last season, Joel Stave in his final appearance against South Carolina in the Capital One Bowl, of course, could not finish that game, was hit and beat up continually in that game, threw a couple touchdown passes, but unfortunately had to leave that game when it was very much up for grabs. Kurt Phillips threw a couple interceptions, one very costly in the end zone. So Stave held out of spring practice, or at least this spring game, I should say. So we didn't see Joel Stave. This is still a quarterback competition. Stave, 22 touchdowns, 13 interceptions last year, very much the incumbent and the number one guy. Tanner McEvoy. The last time we saw Tanner McEvoy play football, it was as basically a center fielder for the Wisconsin defense playing free safety. Of course, McEvoy came from junior college in Arizona to vie for the starting quarterback job, took one for the team, gave up on his dream to play quarterback at that point, and very much contributed as a safety for the Wisconsin team last season. But he's back at quarterback and showing his mobility. He also threw a touchdown pass that was beautifully thrown to Kenzel Doe, 30-yard touchdown pass. And again, that didn't count. That was in the first half of play when the plays were scripted and there was no tackling. There was only 2 scoring opportunities in the second half, and both of the field goal variety as the Cardinal defeated the White 6-0. But we liked McEvoy and what he brought to the table in terms of his mobility much more than Stave. Stave's not a mobile guy. He can move around a little bit, but McEvoy very much the runner. He's going to have to be a much more polished passer. Now, Stave makes mistakes. He threw too many interceptions last year, 13, threw interceptions the year before, so that's his bugaboo. So McEvoy needs to become a more polished passer. He had his shot. He went 4 of 10. I don't know that that's a true indication based on what I saw. I thought he played pretty well. He had a wide open pocket most of the time. He had receivers running free. He didn't have to make any difficult throws, didn't complete any passes that made you say, wow, because most of the guys were wide open, which brings us to some possible issues with the Wisconsin defense. So let's run down the game notes here. Again, we're talking about Tanner McEvoy here in his competition with Joel Stave. Elsewhere for this Wisconsin football team, Corey Clement, who ran for almost 600 yards for this team as a freshman last season in trying to get some carries back from Melvin Gordon, ran for a touchdown on the first drive. And again, that one didn't count. That was in the controlled scrimmage. But it was a classic Wisconsin play at the 6-yard line. They ran it left off tackle, and Clement took it right into the end zone. And the offensive line completely blew the defensive line and the second level back for that touchdown. Also on offense, Gary Anderson very much said before the game that he wanted to stay away from mental mistakes, what he considers administrative errors, pre-snap penalties, and they didn't stay away from that. Wisconsin had several of those, but you're going to have that in a spring game. Of course, his emphasis was that we clean that up, and that's going to be an emphasis, those non-aggression fouls, those penalties that are strictly, again, what he calls administrative penalties that are just, they can just kill you. You're not taking out aggression on the opponent. You're not blocking. You're not tackling. You're not hitting. You're just mentally not prepared and locked in. They scripted the plays in the first half. Again, it was controlled for the first half, and then they let it go in the second half. Bart Houston, he had shoulder surgery. He's still trying to make his way. Will probably be the third string quarterback. I don't think there's any way that he gets into this quarterback competition. He's the freshman from California. And he looked okay. But again, the quarterback play at Wisconsin, if they are to fulfill Melvin Gordon's objectives, and that's get to a national semifinal game and get into this 14 playoff, is going to have to be much better than it's been in recent years, excluding the one Russell Wilson season, of course. Again, no Stave in this game, still beat up from the Capital One Bowl. Quarterback DJ Gillen's got into this game. He's a big kid at 6'3", but he's only 185. He's rail thin. He's a freshman. He's going to have to bulk up. He's an early enrollee, so he got a head start on his career. And he looked rather ragged in this game, but expectedly so. Again, this his first exposure to big-time college football as a true freshman. The quarterbacks are going to need the help of not just this offensive line, because I believe we can count on the offensive line at Wisconsin despite some departures there. But the receiving core has to get better, and I just don't see it getting better. They lost Jared Abbrederis. We know how much he meant to this passing attack. He was pretty much everything. He was everything on the outside. Abbrederis gone to the NFL draft, and he was very much underappreciated outside Madison as one of the 2 or 3 best pass catchers in the Big Ten and one of the top 10 in college football. Wisconsin actually loses its 4 top pass catchers, including Jacob Pedersen, who is an exceptional tight end. And again, when I say Abbrederis was the passing game, that's on the outside. Pedersen hit the seam, made a lot of great catches, and he was very reliable, very dependable. And Wisconsin, of course, in the passing game as well as the running game, counts on the tight end. They've got Jordan Fredericks with 10 receptions from last season as the top pass catcher, coming back from a receiving core that didn't show us much. So I have some doubts about the receiving situation at Wisconsin. Kenzel Doe caught that touchdown pass from McEvoy, again, the one that didn't count in the first half. He ran a go route, made an excellent adjustment to the football, laid out for the football, made a 30-yard touchdown reception. He had 7 catches last year. He was a major factor in the return game, and we last saw Kenzel Doe ripping up South Carolina for a 91-yard kickoff return. The last points the Badgers put on the Gamecocks in that game to make it 27-24, but Kenzel Doe is going to have to be counted on, along with possibly Kenny Love, in this passing game. They need a number 1 guy now. We've been saying for the last couple of years they need somebody to support Abbrederis, but now they need starting receivers, and they need somebody to really kick it into gear and become reliable, run the routes well, make the difficult catches, fight for the football, high point it, wrestle it away from defensive backs and linebackers, and I didn't see it in this game. That's a major concern for this Wisconsin team. All right, fullback Austin Ramish, in the absence of Clement and Gordon, when they were really playing football and popping pads in the second half, ran 12 times for 71 yards. Let's look at the defense for a second here. We've got 23 seniors gone from the 2013 Wisconsin edition that went 9-4. The front 7 basically gone. The big departures, of course, amongst many, Bo Allen and Chris Borland. Derek Landish is a smart kid. He's a senior. He's been in this program the entire time. He's focused. Gary Anderson likes to call him edgy. He had 33 stops last season. I don't know that he's ever going to be Chris Borland, but he should be capable, and they like what they got out of him. He made a couple plays in the backfield in this game. At cornerback, that's a concern as well. There were guys running free in the secondary at times in this football game. There were missed assignments defensively. They were playing very vanilla, of course, as they typically do in the spring game. But at the same time, Sojourn, Shelton, we can count on him. He was an all Big Ten freshman. He had 4 interceptions last season. Gary Anderson actually commented that about 5 practices in this spring, he thought that the sophomore jinx might be setting in, and that Sojourn had the mindset of, I've arrived, I'm all Big Ten, I started every game last year, and I got this thing covered. Gary Anderson had a talk with Sojourn. Things have cleared up. Shelton has kicked it in and had what Gary Anderson calls an excellent spring. Darius Hillary, after playing every football game last season, seems to be entrenched as the number 2 corner. This is where it gets dicey for Wisconsin. They've got Devin Gaulden, they got Darius Ogunbowale, and Terrance Floyd, and also TJ Reynard. Out of those 4 players, they need 2 guys to step up. You need 4 corners now. You need one guy that is a superstar. If you're going to compete for a national championship, you need another guy who is rock solid, basically first or second team all-conference. Then you need some dependable guys that can step in and not get embarrassed and keep the receiver at least in front of them on a man-to-man and then not blow coverages. And I don't know if Wisconsin has that. That's going to be difficulty right there. So that's what I've got from the spring game. I took it in yesterday. We hope to come back with Ohio State, Nebraska, and Penn State a little bit later in the week. Of course, Wisconsin fans, you know the drill. Step in. Let us know what you have to say about this Wisconsin football team. They've got a battle at quarterback, although Stave seems to be still the guy. Tanner McEvoy, an interesting option because Gary Anderson likes a dynamic quarterback who can run where he can run the read option, and he doesn't have that with Stave. Of course, the offensive line, pretty well set. They've got the playmakers at running back. Desperately need to find wide receivers, and then that front 7 on defense is a question mark, but I got to think that Wisconsin's going to be fine up there. Let us know what you have to say about Wisconsin football, and please follow us on Twitter at MarkRogersTV.